If you were a Sega Genesis owner back in the day, you likely crossed paths with a number of Disney properties. Over the course of the platform's life, many developers and publishers were involved in bringing them home to eager Sega fans wanting a taste of that Disney magic. Like most games associated with one brand, the quality of these titles varied greatly. Some were must-owns and some were downright terrible. Most of these releases were attached to big-name properties, heavily advertised, and featured prominently at video rental stores. But what about the Disney games that slipped under the radar? There were a number of smaller projects that weren't attached to a major motion picture, and you may have missed these while you were preoccupied with Street Fighter II and Shinobi 3. In this episode, we are going to go over most of the Disney titles released for the Sega Genesis, put some of the smaller games in the spotlight, and see if they are worth playing now. I hope you guys enjoy Disney and the Sega Genesis. Before we jump into the lesser-known Disney games, let's do a quick rundown of the popular stuff, just in case some of you may have missed the odd title here and there. This one has been on my channel more times than I can count, so you already know what it is. Castle of Illusion was a Sega-developed platformer released in 1990 to commercial and critical acclaim. I love this simple adventure, mainly due to its ease of play and outstanding presentation. It's one of my favorites. Fantasia was the 1991 follow-up to Castle of Illusion, developed as a joint venture between Infogram and Sega of America. This one failed to live up to Castle of Illusion's playability, despite the excellent visuals and animation. There's a lag to every movement that just makes it a chore to deal with. This should have been so much better. Fortunately, 1991 wasn't a total loss thanks to Quackshot starring Donald Duck. Sega brought this one back in-house, and the results speak for themselves. It takes much of what you loved about Castle of Illusion and added things like replayable stages, items to collect, and weapons to procure. In many ways, it's a better game, not to mention its outstanding visuals. Unfortunately, the Disney quality hit a hell of a speed bump with 1992's Tailspin. Based on the popular animated show, this was a huge miss for me. Dark, uninspired environments and completely forgettable gameplay mar this seriously underwhelming experience. This was done by Interactive Designs, the same developer that turned out titles like Eternal Champions, Green Dog, and Garfield. And that, my friends, is one hell of a red flag. As if 1992 wasn't already bad enough for Disney games, Blue Sky Software hit us straight in the throat with Ariel the Little Mermaid. This putrid experience is a series of choppy mazes where you collect things. It sounds awful, plays worse, and is shocking it came from the same house that did Joe Montana 93 and Vector Man. With 1992 looking pretty terrible for anything with Disney on the box, World of Illusion swoops in with a late release to save the day. This co-op driven adventure was developed by Sega in-house, and man is it so much better than the drivel we just went over. This has special stages depending on who you play as, and then co-op specific content as well. Sounds good, looks good, and has all the gameplay you need for these characters. A must-own that is just as good as Castle of Illusion and Quackshot. Things wouldn't stay on track for very long, and 1993 started with a whimper of shame and despair. Beauty and the Beast: Belle's Quest was a Software Creations developed adventure targeted at young girls. There's no attack for your character, and pretty much all you can do is avoid enemies. Mostly you just walk around, find your way through mazes, and play mini-games. It's a bore fest and a complete failure in every way. Software Creations wasn't done punishing us, as they also simultaneously released Beauty and the Beast: Roar of the Beast alongside Belle's Quest. This is a much more action-oriented title, and you actually have an attack this time, but my god is it just as bad. The gameplay is clumsy, and once you take away the bonus stages that have you collecting crap, there's not much left to do. These two Beauty and the Beast games were so weak, both were only released in the United States. This same developer did the dreaded Double Dragon 3 for the Genesis. I don't think anything else needs to be said. It was gonna take a lot to turn around 1993 after the last two disasters, but Virgin Interactive's Aladdin was up to the task. Killer animation was the highlight of this adventure, though it plays pretty good as well. It has a nice stage variety, and the late game offers a bit of challenge. Many of the people that worked on this went on to create Earthworm Jim, another one worth your time. It's also one of the best-selling games on the hardware. Disney was back in 1994 with The Jungle Book, and this one had a strange development cycle. It started out being developed by the team at Virgin that did Aladdin, but was put on hold to finish that game first. When Aladdin was finished, most of the team left Virgin and formed Shiny Entertainment, leaving The Jungle Book here without a developer. Virgin then contracted Eurocom to finish the title and get it released. Fortunately, the merry-go-round of developers didn't ruin it, and it's actually a fair experience. Great animation and a decent challenge round out this surprising adventure. The Lion King was a massive success in theaters, so it was no surprise a game was made of it. This was jointly developed by Westwood Studios, Virgin, Chrysalis Software, and Disney. This was quite a solid release. It starts off feeling really simple and entirely too easy, but there are a couple of areas where the difficulty ramps way up. Still, there are a few really cool animation sequences, and the latter half of the game turns its focus to action. Not perfect, but still quite fun every so often. (1994) wrapped up with the Traveler's Tales developed Mickey Mania. This wasn't based on a film directly, but rather was a look across Mickey's history. It plays well enough, but it's the visuals and special effects that really make this one worth a look. The people that made this have the Genesis firing on all cylinders, and you'll be hard-pressed to find a better-looking Disney experience on the console. The Sega CD version is even better. Traveler's Tales wasn't done knocking your socks off, and they were at the helm of 1995's Toy Story as well. This one plays kinda stiff, but oh my god does it do things you never thought you'd see your Genesis doing. I mean, these graphics would have you believing the base Genesis could have done things like Doom and F-Zero without any add-on chips. This is worth having just for its technical merits alone. "1996 brought Pocahontas, a Funcom-developed cinematic platformer that featured some of the best hand-drawn animation I've ever seen. This plays a bit like Prince of Persia or Out of This World, though the difficulty is quite a bit more tame. As you play, you acquire various powers that let you get past obstacles and enemies. It plays out pretty much like the movie and remains a visual masterpiece." Now that we have finished with the more popular Disney franchises, let's get into the stuff that is much more likely to have been missed by many of you. Disney's Pinocchio was another Virgin and Westwood developed Disney property, based on the memorable 1940s animated film. When it hit the Genesis in late 1996, you really didn't hear much about it. With the new 32-bit machines in full force by then, many gamers had moved on and left their older 16-bit hardware behind. This is actually not a bad kids game though. It has excellent animation and the visuals are faithful to the film. The gems-driven soundtrack is a tad weak, but otherwise this is a good one for your youngsters. When it comes to appeal for older players, however, things are a bit murkier. The action is quite limited, and the majority of the gameplay is just jumping around levels collecting things. It's also a short game, with most levels flying by in just a few minutes. Platforming vets will see the end of this one well inside an hour on their first play session. Disney animated this themselves, so the presentation is well worth a look, but compared to past titles, this is lacking a bit unfortunately. Virgin had developed a 32X edition around the same time, but cancelled it after the hardware failed to sell well. I covered Disney's Bonkers recently and found it to be quite weak, and playing it here again doesn't change that opinion. Released in 1994 and developed by Interactive Designs, this is not your typical platformer like other Disney properties. Instead, you get various gameplay segments like third-person shooting, maze navigation, and some awful overhead racing segments. The animation is fair, but the visuals and sound are nothing special otherwise. Sega dropped it under their Sega Club label, clearly targeting it at younger kids, and there may be some appeal there. For everyone else, this is an uninteresting title with stages that go on for far too long and a variety that is hamstrung by play mechanics that just aren't strong enough to hold your attention. The final nail in the coffin is the lack of a two-player option, which all of its gameplay types could have easily supported. If you are a hardcore fan of the show, maybe take a look. Otherwise, most of you will want to skip this one entirely.
Bonkers.
In 1994, Imagineering developed the terribly named Goofy's Hysterical History Tour. This is a platforming collectathon where you are Goofy, a janitor at a history museum. While working, your arch nemesis Pete is messing up the exhibits, blaming you, and trying to get you fired. You must go in and set things right across the various exhibits that represent different time periods. The core gameplay is simple platforming and jumping on enemies. Stages are set up to where you are basically just trying to get to the exit, collecting balloons for extra lives. Where things get a tad interesting is the Extendo Hand, a contraption Goofy uses for attacking enemies and getting around the stages more efficiently. It can grab certain blocks to help you get across obstacles, and it has other attachments that allow you to attack at distance and even fly for a limited time. It's actually not a bad game overall, and once you get used to the way Goofy jumps and interacts with his environment, it can be actually a fun adventure. For the longest time, I didn't even try playing this because I thought it was some lame-ass edutainment release. I mean, the name makes it sound like that, right? It's nothing of the kind, however, and may be worth a look if you enjoy the simple fun platformers like this can provide. It's no Castle of Illusion to be sure, but it's far from the train wreck that was Fantasia. It was only released in North America.
Yup.
1994 also brought Mickey's Ultimate Challenge. This was developed by Way Forward and is a series of minigames, puzzles, and memory events attached to a larger mystery that must be solved. As Mickey, you have been sucked into a fairy tale where the land of Beanswick has been ravaged by earthquakes. You must help solve the mystery, and so the adventure begins. The gameplay is set up where you are doing things like matching pictures, jumping on certain letter combinations, playing memory games, and solving simple puzzles. As you gain items, you must use them at various times to get deeper into the game. This is a fairly fun one for the younger crowd, and if you have kids, this is definitely something you can enjoy with them. But it's also very short, very easy, and lacks any real replayability once it's defeated. You can choose Minnie if you are so inclined, but she changes nothing for the gameplay or story. Had this been longer, tougher, and had a co-op mode, it could have been something special. As is, your kids may enjoy it, but I doubt seriously it'll hold your attention for more than an afternoon. So far, pretty much every game we have touched upon was released in North America, except this one. Launched in late 1995, Donald and Maui Mallard was a rather unique product that was only seen in Brazil and PAL territories. It was developed internally by Disney Interactive and stars Donald Duck in two different roles. The first is Maui Mallard, a private detective searching for a missing idol, and then there's Cold Shadow, a bow staff wielding ninja. The gameplay between the two is quite different. As Maui Mallard, you have an insect gun that has multiple forms of ammo. Some explode like grenades and others home in on enemies no matter where they are. There are other items to get as well. You can restore health and find extra lives. To access Cold Shadow, you need Yin Yang coins, which count down once activated. This one has really grown on me over the years, and I really enjoy the challenge and stage variety. It feels so different than your typical Disney affair, and instead leans closer to action titles like Earthworm Jim. Excellent animation and visuals round out one heck of an adventure. For those curious, the Super Nintendo version was developed by Eurocom and is a very different experience. Even Capcom brought out a Disney game for the Genesis, 1994's The Great Circus Mystery, starring Mickey and Minnie. If this looks and feels like a Super Nintendo game to you, you'd be right. This first appeared there as Disney's Magical Quest II, The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie, the second game in the Magical Quest series. This is the only one that would appear on a Sega console, and it's quite the solid adventure. First, it has two-player co-op, which really elevates everything about this. Being able to tackle every stage as Mickey and Minnie together harkens back to the excellent World of Illusion by Sega. There's also a few different suits you can wear that changes the gameplay up quite a bit. There's a vacuum that can suck up enemies, there's a climbing hook that allows you to scale walls and bricks, and there's a hobby horse that gives you a cork gun. When nothing is worn, you can grab, throw, and break blocks, which can hide life, money, points, and recharge your weapons. There's a great amount of variety in the levels and the graphics are really nice. The only real weakness here is that it's a fairly brief adventure that won't take you long to get past. I think overall it's an excellent title with a sky-high fun factor reminiscent of the 8-bit Sega Disney releases. Often overlooked, it's a must-play. One of the coolest television shows from Disney in the 1990s was Gargoyles, so when a game was made based on it in 1995, I really wanted to play it, and man is this so close to being something incredible. You play as Goliath, leader of the Gargoyles, in his bid to stop the evil Demona. The gameplay is platform heavy with bouts of simple beat 'em up elements like combo attacks and throws. The presentation is top notch. Fluid animation, great backgrounds, and dark and foreboding art design really nail the feel of the show. So what's holding this game back, you ask? Mainly it's the way it plays. Enemies take entirely too many hits to defeat. I mean, you can wail on some of these guys for 15 seconds before they die. Just grab them and toss them, you say. Well, that's easier said than done, as many grapple attempts end in damage as the enemy hits you multiple times during the process. Goliath is also too fast, which makes placing him in the right spot hard on some of the stages. Environmental hazards tend to tag you more often than you'd like just because you are so big and fast. I was also not impressed with the weak and ineffective gem soundtrack, which does the source material no justice at all. That's not to say it's not still a really good game, however. You do get used to things enough to mitigate some of its issues, allowing you to enjoy it more for what it is. It'll likely frustrate many of you upon first inspection, but if you can stick with it, there is a damn fine game in here. Disney Interactive developed it, and it remains a Genesis exclusive due to the Super Nintendo edition being cancelled before its release. So there we go, Disney games on the Sega Genesis. As you can see, there is a wide array of titles here, so don't think every one of them are made just for kids. Some of these play so well, they hold up today for all ages. But beware, there are some real stinkers in this bunch. Games so poor that going back to them make you realize just how massive the divide could be between something good and something not. This is all coming from someone that was not a fan of the vast majority of Disney's characters, movies, and TV shows. I didn't care at all about Mickey, Donald, or the rest of the bunch, yet I still found many of these appealing just from the sheer fun factor they excelled in. The thing is, many of the 8-bit Sega Disney offerings were just as good, so there is an entire lineup there to look at as well. Best part, many of these were quite different from their 16-bit counterparts. 8-bit Aladdin is not a port of the Genesis or Super Nintendo editions, and there are exclusives like the Lucky Dime Caper and Land of Illusion that embody the very best of that era's gameplay. I did this episode because I really want you guys that may have skipped some of these back in the day to give them an honest chance. It's true they aren't complicated, nor are they gonna give games like Shinobi 3 a run for its money, but you still might find them a good time all the same. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.